Good morning. It's Tuesday, July 22nd, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 30. My name is Chris, and I'm pretty excited because joining me in studio today is somebody I've known for a long time, but never gotten a chance to meet in the meat space. It's Admiral Murphy, a.k.a. Zach Murphy. Hey,
hello.
Murphy.
Hey,
welcome to the
Chris.
show.
Hey, nice to be here.
Well, I'm really glad I was able to grab you. You just joined Angela for a special board game edition of the Faux Show.
Yeah, guys, go check that out if you guys like gaming.
Apparently a passion of yours, my friend. I was impressed with your board game knowledge.
Yeah, and that was just scratching the surface.
I had a feeling of that.
Gaming nerdom.
I got the sense that was the case. Well, Murphy, I know that you're out on the market, always have your eye on up-and-coming vehicles. And so our first story is the perfect one because we're also going to be joined by our esteemed Mumble group, and we're going to dig through something that I don't think we need to freak out about, but it's something worth considering. Let's take a little intellectual journey into the future when more of our cars are like the Tesla model cars, more computerized, perhaps automated. So let's think of it in this lens as we talk about our next story. So the Tesla Model S has reportedly been hacked, and this hack allows you to control the locks, the horns, the headlights while the car is in motion. The hacks were carried out at Syscan 360 Security Conference in Beijing. This is an article published by Bloomberg News this week, and the report cited that a brief post on the Chinese social media website Weibo from a representative of this company that did the hacking. They said the experiment was carried out by their own people. They're taking credit for it and say that they can affect a Tesla model that is in motion. Tesla Motors officially vowed to investigate and report on this report and dig into issues around its Model S hacks. This isn't the first hack we've heard about with Tesla cars or Prius cars or other vehicles like this too. So, obviously, as cars get more sophisticated, we're going to have this problem where they become computers, and computers can be compromised. You
freak out if it starts talking to me like Kit from Knight Rider?
Right? Are you, Murphy? Like when you're looking out there, is this kind of stuff? Does this register in your thought process when you're thinking about what you're looking in a car? Is this something you even worry about?
No, it isn't, and I probably should because like we have two Priuses at our house, and that's what I drive to work every day right now.
Oh, you're gonna get hacked, Murphy? No,
yeah.
I don't think it's like I don't think you really have to worry about it right now. But
it makes you think.
It does, because this is going to be what we've seen. Like technology started, and at first it was in a very limited scope, right? It was military applications, and because it was so limited in its scope, it was fairly what it did. It was reliable. But as technologies become more generalized, as one common platform has to do more things, either that be the x86 processor or up to operating systems, there is more room for mistakes and errors. And as we become more dependent on technologies, it ends up in roles that are more critical, like driving our cars or all kinds of things like that. We really have to stop and say, okay, technology now needs to go to the next level of stability and really it has to sort of up its game a little bit in security and things like this. And I think by putting technology like this in cars like the Model S or Google's self-driving cars, we're going to force the issue. And who knows what will happen? I don't know, Eric, what about you? Are you going to buy a Model S or say their Model 3 comes out and it's in a price range you could afford? Would you be curious or interested or perhaps even scared away from buying the Model S if it had security issues like this?
I honestly think that, security problems can be dealt with because, everybody can submit patches, they can always do a car recall. At that point, they fix whatever the problem is with your car and make it so that mission-critical stuff like, say your engine dying isn't going to happen.
Right, it's a technology problem.
Exactly, and technology problems can be fixed. We see it every day in Linux. We see it every day in Windows. We see it every day in Mac. They fix security problems, and I can see, Tesla's going to have to just start dealing with that.
Right, and it's not just Tesla, let's be clear. It's probably every car manufacturer as they get more sophisticated. Tesla's just sort of on the leading edge here, right?
Well,
Clearly,
Tesla's
exactly.
Tesla gave they've already opened their patents, so I'm pretty sure GM already announced that they're going to be using their patents for at least something.
Yeah, that could be a way maybe people collaborate a little more if they kind of say, this is important enough that we really need to come together. And also, we should keep in mind a lot of these are based on Linux. Linux is, at least at some level, providing some normalization, which I think is a good thing.
And it's very normal for car companies to have recalls. And when stuff happens, bam, recall.
It's not just about patching your computer anymore, huh?
Exactly. It's about patching. Well, in the words of Alan, patch your S.
Right, right. Yeah, very true. All right, I want to move on to a story that slipped through the cracks last week because if you dig into it, there's actually some interesting details that come out. Google Everybody know Google makes money. Google is rich. They are doing great. They maybe, some analysts weren't totally happy. Those analysts are idiots. And it's great because here's the deets. Google reported in just this quarter, Q2 2014, $15.96 billion in revenue. That's a 22% increase over the last quarter, and that's an earnings of $6.08 per share. Now, see, the analysts wanted $6.25 a share. That's why they are all poo-pooing on Google's report here. I'll tell you what they should be talking about, though. Number one, Google has, if you dig through their report, you'll find that selling hardware and apps through the Play Store now makes up 10% of Google's revenues. This is huge. That's up 53% over last year, and it's $1.6 billion in revenue. So there's two ways to look at this. This is rocking for Google. Their Play Store and devices revenue is up 53%. It's 10% of Google's revenue. Now that's a serious chunk of cash. The other way to look at this is the creator and provider of the number one platform in the world, not just on mobile, but in the world, makes the least amount of money on mobile. Nobody right now in that area is making less money but Google. Microsoft makes more money off Android than Google does. Isn't that weird?
But that might be changing.
Yeah, it could. I mean, you're right. This could be one of those.
It's also strong-arm. They strong-arm everybody to get the money. So Google
it's the patent thing. Yeah, it is the patent
Yep.
thing. Now,
and now that we know what those patents are, they're starting to throw them out one by one.
but don't you think it'll be interesting to find out, like through Android One, where maybe Google has a little more of a say in the whole pipeline, that perhaps as they get that say and as they sort of push their vision of Android One forward and maybe are more direct in line for sales, perhaps this number is going to go up. I think it's fascinating to see that, though. And here's what's so critical, and this is why Google has to work on this, because the other bit of deets you get if you really dig through the numbers, and I've got, let's see. Yeah, here it is. I've got a chart here that is kind of weird to read, but kind of makes sense if you're watching the video version. Or it's in the show notes, too, actually. And what this shows is that Google's cost per clicks is actually down quite significantly. And I've charted it now using a thread that I've been following this guy who's done this every quarterly reports on Hacker News for the last 14 quarters. There's this guy that's been keeping track of this. Google's revenue that they earn when you click on an ad is down for the last 14 consecutive quarters. Now, the thing about Google is that's where they make all of their money from. So just in the last quarter, cost per click was down 7%. But for networks, that was just network sites. For sites outside the network, like if you had an ad on a website that you own, or on JupiterBroadcasting.com, those out-of-network ads are down 13%. They say the growth of mobile has been a big part of the decline. I think that's crap. But they do note that mobile ads tend to cost less. But here's the big thing. This continued erosion of the cost per click number over 14 quarters has got to indicate that the value of ads is going down overall, which is a big problem for Google because this is 90% of their cash cow or 87% of their cash cow. So they've got to come up with these other revenue streams. So they've got to take more control over Android. They've got to make more revenue out of the Play Store and things like that because over time, it would appear that internet advertising, at least for the last 14 consecutive quarters, is going down in how much money it'll make, which could mean someday, maybe a web with less ads.
Mm-hmm. I know personally, I avoid ads on the internet.
Yeah.
I use ad block.
Yeah.
And I block all those ads just because they personally annoy me at points.
I think that's becoming more commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just want to point out, if Google's revenue is going up while their main source of income is going down, that tells me they're doing an excellent job diversifying.
Yeah, very true, right? And they're managing to optimize in areas, maybe cut some costs here and there. Yeah, like if anything, Google's handling this very well. And I think the indications are they are not that concerned about it. In fact, they're spending money like cray. In just the last quarter, they've really doubled down on their infrastructure and spending. Google's quarterly infrastructure spending has been skyrocketing now for several quarters. I got a chart in the show notes if you want to check that out. In the past 3 months, no exception, Google spent nearly $2.65 billion on data centers during the second quarter. That's more than $1 billion over last year's second quarter and more than triple what it spent 2 years ago. So they are doubling down. The company out there that has the largest data center infrastructure in the history of humanity is doubling down on the size of their infrastructure. So they're up to something, and they're obviously not too concerned about those cost per clicks. All right, so all that info is in the show notes if you want to check it out. Let's shift gears. Let's keep it on the whole Android and future revenue growth, and I want to talk about Android Wear. It's kind of big, and it's something we really haven't addressed yet. And to set it up, I want to play a clip from Joanna Stern's review for the Wall Street Journal. Now, I am kind of playing the negative part of the review. I will acknowledge that, but that's because this is the part that resonates with me, and then I want to bounce off from this into a conversation with you guys. So I'll play just a brief moment of Joanna's review, and then we'll talk.
With my ticket right on my wrist at boarding time. This has been my wrist for the last week. Okay, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but every time I get a notification on my phone, I get it on my wrist. I want the same notifications in both places. I do want to be notified every time my editor or fiance contacts me. I don't want to be notified every time I get an Instagram like. You can mute notifications from individual apps, but Google says it hopes to give users more specific controls by contacts soon. In addition, both watches had performance glitches and had to be charged every day with proprietary charging cradles. And unlike fitness bands, these watches can't do much beyond counting steps. And good luck seeing the screen in the sun. And they're certainly not stylish or slim. They look more like cheap sports watches. This is what happened when I tried to wear it to my best friend's wedding.
If you wear that cell phone on your arm, you cannot be at my wedding.
But even if you think either of these smartwatches look smart, buying one right now would be stupid. We've reported that Apple's working on an iWatch, and more stylish Android Wear watches and improved software are coming soon, which means for now, I'm stuck with this.
Okay, now before we get into this, I want to stop and set some ground rules. First of all, everybody imagine we're like a year into the future. Maybe we're 3 years into the future, not that far, but we're far off into the future, and new Android Wear devices come out. The Moto 360 is out on the market. Okay, everybody take a second. Imagine this. Okay, you've got this in your mind? All right. Now, here's what I want us to think about. Do you actually want one of these devices notifying you all the time about every single email or every tweet or however you set it up? Because I might argue that we don't, and I'll tell you why. The New Yorker went out and did a survey. They worked with Accutur to do the survey. They did some informal information. It came in and said that optimistic experts predict that only 20 million smartwatch sales would happen this year alone. When it's at its best, okay, and then after that, they'd say it would still only be a small market compared to smartphones and tablets. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be a massive market for the individual hardware makers, which means it'll always probably be in that accessory category potentially. But I think the core question here is, if we look at this, is there a practical reason to have essentially a smartphone on your wrist? What do you think, Murphy? Do you want something like this? You got an iPhone.
Yeah.
Would you like to maybe get like your notifications? Like if somebody likes a photo on Instagram, would you like that to be popped up on your wrist or a text message?
If it's something like a text message, I definitely would. Like, especially if I can't reach into my pocket to grab my phone or something like that. Now, every little thing, maybe not. But yeah, I find it nice to be able to look at my wrist and just see something, because I know my friend had one of those for a bit. He was testing it out, and he really liked that part.
Now, what if it always requires a Bluetooth connection to your phone? So it means you always got to have your phone in your pocket, and it's going to be using your phone's data connection. Are you less interested? Because here's why I ask you. That means now you have to charge two devices, and one device is dependent on the other. Does that change the calculus for you at all?
Possibly. I'd have to.
Still willing to give it a go, though.
Yeah. I still would consider it, but it definitely makes me think twice about it.
What do you think, Mumble Room? Anybody in the Mumble Room really want to get a smartwatch? Are you excited about the Moto 360?
Well, I used to have something similar, a Sony Live View, and I really liked it. I liked being able to look at my wrist and have it tell me whoever text message just came through. And it was very convenient. Did I have to charge it every night? Try every other night, but, these do seem a little bit better, just way more expensive than the Sony Live View ever was, because that really wasn't a smartwatch. It was more like an external display for your phone controlled by Bluetooth.
Here's what would make it work for me, is if it could have, and I know they're working on it too, I'm sure, but if you could have the LTE data connection in the watch itself, so like if I was going to go on a walk, or if I was going to go to the grocery store, or something where maybe I didn't want my full phone, but I still wanted my wife to be able to send me a message, or like do some basic kind of responses like that. If it always depends on my phone being in my pocket, then I'm just going to only just bring my phone. That's for me. Now, that's just me. It's like I don't want to have to worry about carrying two things. Right now, I am presently carrying two phones, and it drives me crazy because I have to charge both phones, and I got to remember to put them both in my pocket. And, like which one has my messages and which one doesn't, and it's just a pain in the butt. So two devices.
Let me give you a scenario
Lay it on me.
That was really good. Let me give you a scenario that was really good. On my live view, say somebody started calling me while my phone was like in my pocket. What I would do is I would have a Bluetooth headset. I could look at my wrist, see who was calling, hit the headset, and start talking.
Yeah. See, now this is okay. So what we need is we need the smartwatches that we have right now are not so smartwatches. They're like essentially remote displays to our phone. We need something that's slightly smarter, but I like the chat room saying I don't want to pay for a separate data connection. Like, for example, would it suck? Yes, but it would be kind of nice too if I had the option to do a speakerphone from my watch. Because you see a lot of people driving down the road and they're just they have their phone and they're on speakerphone. And they're just talking into their phone, driving down the road on speakerphone. And you're like, why? You see a lot of people doing that, right? But you could also do that to your watch, and you'd be all Dick Tracy, yeah, I'll get right on that.
I was just about to mention Dick Tracy.
Well, and a lot of messaging apps support voice memos too. Again, if these watches could just do a little bit more on their own, then I think it's a no-brainer for me. But right now, especially with Android Wear, its current version, it's it's essentially the notifications tray remotely projected onto your wrist. I'd be willing to give it a shot, though.
I'd give it a shot. I don't know how much I'd pay.
What's that? Go again?
The Galaxy Gear can do all that stuff now, and it's not even that, it's not enticing at all. It makes you look stupid. It's not functional. There's a camera feature, and the camera feature is terrible. The mic basically to make the mic work on the phones, they have to have a really low powered mic, and it's just you basically have to put it right up to your mouth for it to work. And you could feel like a jerk by you just using it ever.
Well, I could tell you, I could also see how they could play a role in something that we don't have yet. So we're not seeing it. As home automation gets closer and you have really hyper-local location tracking, so the studio would know when Chris is in the room, and so the monitors would turn on, the Hughes lights would turn on, and it would be location aware. And then when I leave the room, those things would shut down or whatever. Certain profiles would load for Chris. Bill Gates has that in his house today, right? He's had it for years. We all have heard about, when you go over to Bill Gates' house, you put a necklace on, and every room you're in automatically adjusts to your preferences, temperature, everything. Well, you could see how that would be way more useful on a watch, because a watch is attached to your wrist. You always have that. So for things that need your location and for things that need your identity, that's one really probably has. So it's something you could have with you all the time. And then now smartwatches are looking really interesting. But again, current models are not doing this.
I absolutely want a smartwatch as a secondary device if it wasn't $250 or more.
Yeah, that was the other thing, right? Yeah, at their current functionality, they're like $100 cell phone accessories to me, because they really are they're an accessory to your cell phone.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. When I saw it at the store, I saw the price, and I was like, that's a lot
little much
for what
an
it's
accessory.
doing.
Yeah. But if it tightens some automation and other stuff, maybe.
Once you can buy a phone and get the smartwatch for an additional $25 or $50 from your carrier, I think it'll become much more widespread. But I don't think right now it's technology enthusiasts who are going to go out and actually look to go buy one.
Yeah.
I don't really see it in getting wide circulation until it just comes with the phone.
Well, technology enthusiasts who are going to be pioneering that.
Right? Yeah, I mean, they're the early adopters. The suckers, us.
Us.
Yeah, it's going to be us. Well, all right. So something I'd love to get the audience's thoughts on the smartwatches, because I feel like I'm borderline curmudgeon on them, but if they just presented me with the right use case and scenario, I could be pulled over to the other side of a fanboy. So I would like to hear the audience's thoughts on it. So go to techtalktoday.reddit.com to leave your feedback in this thread, or because I'm going to be out of town, I might not post it. You can just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click the contact link. Mumble Room, any final thoughts on smartwatches before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think they actually have a pretty nice role to play in corporate environments.
Interesting.
The corporation has the information sending, and you are just getting what you need for the meeting, for getting to somewhere, for the notifications, for calling you to something in a hospital, for example, getting to a patient, taking whatever. Corporate environments are the way I find actually most useful. It's what people are using tablets for in a lot of ways, just to do small control and small communication going on.
Yeah, you could also see. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, especially if you can incorporate an RFID in the actual watch itself.
Yeah, you basically got it. Yeah.
That makes access control even easier too.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. You could tie in computer authentication. I mean, you wouldn't want to depend only on that. It would have to be something you have, something you know, but it could be the good something you have. And the thing is it could even be deactivated by the employer potentially. I mean, so there's a lot of benefits for corporate America too, not just the convenience of the worker. All right, that's an interesting prospect and one that the audience could follow up on. Mumble Room, thanks you guys very much for joining me today. And Murphy, it was great having you in studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the Pacific Northwest while you're out here. What's your next destination?
Probably food.
Well,
And then
I don't mean like. I
we're
mean
gonna be
like
doing
you're.
hikes around the
Okay.
area. There's a whale watch tomorrow.
A
stuff like
whale
that.
watch?
Yeah, whales.
Oh man.
Just like in Star Trek 4.
That's right. That's right. Remember, you have to save the whales. Do you think the audience gets that?
I hope. If you guys don't,
We're a little disappointed.
Yeah, disappointed.
I want to remind you about the Patreon. You can support the Jupiter Broadcasting Network by going over to patreon.com/today and invest in our network. We've got some pledge levels over there that you can just go down and have a description of what you'll be contributing to. And there's a swag club too. If you're a baller and want to get some swag thrown at your face every now and then, you can get jumping at that level. But any amount you can afford, patreon.com/today. We invest that directly back in to the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. Now, we were talking about hyper mobile devices, watches, right? Smartphones, right? But Murphy, I think you'll appreciate this. It's right out of 1990. It's a Radio Shack cell phone. You won't believe how mobile this bad boy is. Check this out.
Finding a phone in a car isn't that unusual anymore, except when it leaves the car, for greener pastures, the high seas, or a leisurely lunch. Radio Shack keeps you in constant communication with their affordable, transportable cellular telephone.
Hello? Well, yes, he's right here. It's for you.
Yes, I heard about the merger. Buy 100 shares.
The affordable, transportable cellular telephone, only at Radio Shack.